I think, any second. All right. Are you ready for this, Travis? We're live.
I am. All right.
We are live. Okay, is it really, this is your first LinkedIn Live?
It is my first LinkedIn Live.
Lies. I find that hard to believe. I mean, you've done like TED Talks and you got a podcast and this is your first LinkedIn Live. I mean, I feel kind of lucky to be the first person to introduce you to this format. It's pretty cool.
Well, thank you, Jennifer.
As we kind of maybe wait a little bit for people to hop on, I thought I would just chat a little bit about how we got here, right? So you and I didn't know each other, right? We met, and well, first I should say, I guess I'm socially challenged today. Thanks to everybody for showing up to our LinkedIn Live. You are more than just the sum of your parts, and this is going to be a little bit different kind of LinkedIn Live. It's not just going to be talking about job seekers and looking for jobs and tips and tools. It's going to be sort of based about a conversation that Travis and I had when we first met, right? And I was like, we need to do a live talking about your journey and what we learned sort of about each other and in this space. So why don't you introduce yourself, and then I'll kind of go into it, if that's okay with you.
Perfect. Well, I'm Travis Davis. I'm a speaker, disability advocate, consultant, podcaster. So, I mean, I wear a number of hats, no pun intended, with the hat that I'm wearing now. But
no, I like puns. Do it. Bring
yeah.
it.
All right. But no, I'm just incredibly grateful that our paths have crossed, and even more so because of where you live and where I'm looking to relocate. So I think that adds like another cool layer to the story. And I just really appreciated our initial conversation, and I'd say your like awareness and empathy for seeing past my disability and recognizing that I am more than just the sum of my parts, and just having that discussion and was really cool.
I mean, it was very cool for me too. So, hey, Jennifer, I'm the CEO of Intry Careers. You can check it out. But really, that's kind of not what this is about, which, my team is probably going to be like, oh my God, why are you doing this? But, when we were introduced, we started talking and there are some areas where, we overlap and where we converge and we play sort of in a similar space. Oh, and to those of you who are watching, super again, thank you for joining us. But put any comments that you have, and then we'll try to get to them. Or if you've got questions, or if you want to join the conversation, or you want to share your journey in this and your experiences, that's what we would love to have, and what we would love to see. So, that being said, when you talk about the sum of your parts, so I met you and we were talking. And one of the things that you led with, and it's not a criticism at all, right? But you started talking and led with your disability. And when I say, like, you're not the sum of your parts, what I'm really trying to say is that it's not just your gender, your disability, your job title, or any other aspect of who you are, right? You're not making like a checklist of characteristics or a collection of labels. And I mean, I think you're this amazing mixture of experience and talents and quirks and potential that I don't think you or anybody needs to be reduced to this, category. I mean, like, when you describe your favorite book, do you list the parts, the paper, the ink, the binding? Probably not. You'd probably talk about the story it tells and how it made you feel and the impact that it had. And that's what I mean when, like, you're the whole story. It's not just the individual pages. So those of you who again are joining, that is in my brain, right? And other people may
Mm.
have a different definition of it, but that's what I mean when I say you're not the sum of your parts. So,
I
um,
think I was just going to add, you mentioned that's what I led with. I think growing up,
mhm,
that's what I've just been conditioned to talk about. And I think
yeah,
sometimes like that's what people want to hear from me, or they want to know about my disability. So my default's like, okay, because I have cerebral palsy and I use forearm crutches. So it's not like an invisible disability. It is very clear that I have some
yeah,
type of challenge and people are curious. But at the same time, I am a holistic person that I have um, other interests, and disability is just part of it, even though I can't disassociate myself from it. Like I can't hide from it.
yeah.
Um,
And why would you want to? I mean, I'm just saying, like,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
part of what makes you you. I mean, like, let's just back up a smidge, right? You're a consultant, you're a speaker, and you're a host of Off the Crutch podcast, which I mean, I really love the title. I think it's funny, it's quirky, and it just takes everything kind of head on. And um, I think what you were saying dovetails into like the impact that you had through your TEDx talk and the work that you've developed in doing creative workplaces and inclusive workplaces in a time where it kind of feels like maybe things are starting to be not as inclusive, maybe not, I don't know. Um, so I want to hear about that. And then I want to share one of my favorite quotes about kind of a life quote, right? And the only disability in my life is a bad attitude. And your disability may be overt, others may not be so visible, right? But what you bring to the table and how you talk about things, I think is really profound. And I think it's really interesting. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I've had a lot of experience in like the job, I'd say like placement, like helping individuals find
Mm-hmm.
employment, and then helping
Mm-hmm.
individuals with disabilities find employment. Last year I helped two of my friends open up an acai bowl and smoothie shop that employs individuals with disabilities. And um, last July, I think this is kind of where I've put a lot of my focus, or at least I look at it as like a turning point. Um, I had applied for a position at this company.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had the interview, it was about a 15-minute or so on Zoom. And it didn't go quite as well as I had hoped, but they were using a like a AI type of program to record the the interview, and it like would share like how you did. And so after the interview was done, I got the
Mm-hmm.
report, and it not only sent the video of the interview, but everything they said about me after.
Mm-hmm.
And just I won't go into specific details, but
Do I
I
have to
think
go
a
beat
lot of
anybody up?
no, it's okay. It's okay. I'll keep that in the back of my mind though the
I'm
next
just
time
saying,
one of those situations. But it really highlighted like people saying the quiet part out loud, or what misconceptions people have about disabilities, and like hiring somebody with a disability. And like I
yeah,
couldn't believe what was what was said. And I think that really motivated me to help companies, help individuals in HR, and even help other people with disabilities like understand like we need to get past looking at somebody's disability and look at that as like a superpower in the workplace. And because, I have been in education for quite some time, and
Mm-hmm.
being in the classroom with students asking me questions about my disability, but we're afraid to ask, but we're afraid to just ask questions. Being able to break down those barriers at such a young age allowed me to now have conversations with folks in business about the same exact thing, but except this role, or in this situation, it's, how do we integrate individuals with disability in the workplace so it just
Okay, can
becomes
I
like a
just ask a
common.
question? What was the feedback that you got back? Like, if you're
From
comfortable
the
sharing a few bits.
Sure.
I kind of having a conversation. I'm just saying.
Yeah. They were a little I'm trying to be as delicate as I can, but
Right,
some
be
of
delicate.
it.
You're not saying who it was. You're just,
That's true. That is
I
true.
mean, I think
Um,
here's why I'm asking, because I think people need to know.
yeah.
Like, I've gotten feedback where I went out for a consulting opportunity, and the feedback I got was, they thought you might be too pretty and you might be a distraction. And I was like,
Mm,
that's so fucking insulting. Are you kidding me?
mm,
Wow. Totally different than what you're saying. But, I'm like, really?
yeah.
So, like, this still happens. And I think you sharing it and your resilience to the feedback was part
Yeah.
of a catalyst. So, if
Sure.
you want to share it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Uh, I think one of the people that had interviewed me the year before was surprised of like how poorly I did, because I did great the year before. And then the other people on the call were saying like, well, I think he may be on like Social Security, or people who are trying to stay on Social Security may have to apply for jobs to stay on it, to like let them know like, oh, I'm still actively on. And then just like other misconceptions related to my
wow.
disability.
Huh.
And I
Yeah.
when I sat on that for a couple hours, I found their email addresses, and I emailed them, and I said, well, this is actually why I did poorly. Like I owned it, but I said, yes, I do use a wheelchair. That is correct. Your assumption was right in the interview. No, I'm not applying for the job to stay in some sort of program. I mean, I have 2 degrees. Thank you very much. And
Yeah. Mic drop. And
so
by the way,
yeah,
bite.
yeah,
Oh my
yes.
God. Oh my God.
So, and then the interesting part of that was, because I didn't take any legal action, I actually wanted to turn it into a
It's a
teachable
catalyst.
moment,
Yeah. It's a
catalyst.
catalyst.
But when I talked to one of the HR people there, that individual was like so apologetic and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happens. It's a bummer when technology doesn't work the way that we want it to. And so, totally overlooking the fact that these individuals were saying things that shouldn't have been said and that I should have gotten, that HR person was so concerned of the fact that I had received it, and like, oh, like a bummer that you got it,
Yeah.
not
So
like.
she's taking the legal perspective of, oh my God, we have to protect the company versus, hey, maybe you have an effed up company culture and you should see the whole person. So, kind of going back to like how you and I met, and to you guys who are watching, sometimes they can be kind of direct, which I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm totally comfortable with it. But I mean, like, look at that smile, look at that face. 2 degrees, we're talking, we're having fun, and when I started just thinking about it, I was like, okay, like you are such a value add to whatever organization you are part of, right? And but I wanted to have this conversation because I think like, why sometimes do we lead with our limitations instead of our strengths? And is there a way that you know you can leverage that? Like when I get stressed or when I'm in different situations like that, or I'm feeling like trying to read the room, I try to lead with humor, right?
Mhm.
And because it can sort of, for me, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but do you go into situations now since that happened and like you do with me and use it as like, what, like I have cerebral palsy. Let me be clear. It doesn't define me. I'm badass. I have 2 degrees. I've done all these amazing things. I have a goddamn podcast. I have 20,000 followers. I have shit to say, stuff to do, and I'm going to change how people with disabilities are being viewed. Because when I first met you, right, we were on a Zoom,
Mhm.
and it would never have occurred to me, A, that you had it, and B, I don't think like I don't think anybody would care,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that they were worried about, you're trying to scam the system when you're out there actually trying to get a job, and then you get feedback that says, like your crutches or your wheelchair, this was a distraction. How about like your ideology is a distraction, you dumbass? Like, are you kidding me? Like that, this is part of why I wanted to have this conversation. So I'm just gonna bring it back in for myself, not you, because you lived it, but I'm still pissed off about it. Um,
There
so
were a handful of people that were not happy, and um I yeah, I mean they're mad for me. I think I you know what it is, Jennifer? I think because, and I'm not trying to say poor me, but I've just I get so much adversity on a daily basis that I just become like immune to it. So
mm,
things, it takes a lot to surprise me. And I'm not saying that I get like um uh figuratively like battered down on a daily basis that kind of beats me up emotionally, but I I'm just like, yeah, like okay, this happened to me, and it's just like another thing that has happened in my life, and that's why it can be difficult for me to have this internal like anger, when I think sometimes I need that to keep me in check and keep me motivated to be like, yeah, like this isn't right. But I I just think part of my personality is having conversations and being educated. I saw when I was visiting Austin back in October, I saw a handful of um, uh, inaccessibility that I pointed out, and I mean that really annoyed me because it's like this is actually affecting multiple people with disabilities on a daily basis because of these curb cuts or these stairs that you can't get to the pool in a hotel. Um, so that, yeah, I mean, there's just so much, and I think of it as just like, where do I focus my energy to really affect the change? Whether it's in HR companies or out and about when I'm just using my wheelchair or my crutches.
and and here's what I like. I look at you, right? And my immediate reaction is, handsome, smart, articulate, and badass. You're taking and you're doing things with so much adversity that I think the rest of us can't relate to it in the same way. And people need to understand, like, you go to a hotel, they don't have a elevator. So you gotta what, like, how do you do that, right? If you go on the website, it says certain things, and that's just something I think that people take for granted, and I think that that is unfortunate. But I think, like, you're not just you're not defined by it, right? So I want to switch gears just a smidge and talk about like the power of being seen, right?
Mhm.
So, and this is a personal question, and you can be like, pass, fair. Um, but what was it like the first time someone finally saw past your disability and saw you? Was it a moment? Was there a moment? Was it an evolution? How did it work?
Hmm. Um, Thinking on the fly here. I I think I don't necessarily think it was one moment. Um, I do, because when I was in school, like growing up, I was the only person in the entire school with a physical disability because I didn't go to public school and there
Hmm.
wasn't anybody like me. And so I think growing up, I had friends who just saw me for me. I mean, you've met one of my friends, and
I know. She's a
yes,
dentist
yeah,
and
yes,
she's amazing, but that's a separate conversation. Like, we're
yes,
going to still
yes,
focus on you.
yes, but I mean, I would say those experiences at such an early age, where even though I was the only person in the school, nobody looked at me differently. They wanted to incorporate me, and they saw
So,
like,
okay, can we just duplicate all of those people in your school and then roll them out to the rest of society and be like, you're not different,
hmm, yeah,
right? So that's that's even better. That's even like those people are amazing. I mean, I would like to think that I am one of those people that don't see that in people, right? Maybe I do, maybe I don't see it. But I think that in and of itself, I mean, was it how, did your parents play a role in your courage and being like, hey, you're just like everybody else. This is just like a thing, right? So you've got crutches. Sometimes you might need to use a wheelchair. Okay, like, but you're still you. Like, you are you. These are like supporting tools, like the book analogy, right? Like, that's the
mm-hmm,
hardcover book. That's the
yeah,
spine, right? But it's not the story. It's
mm-mm.
not the brain. Those aren't the brains behind the person.
Yeah. I think my parents, they don't see my disability. Like, my brother doesn't see that. My
Did he beat you up
sister-in-law,
even though were your brother?
I
Did he
have
beat
I
you
have a little scar. Like, over the years, it's gotten better, but it wasn't of him beating me up. He had swung this like little toy plane, and it accidentally nicked me a long time ago. But that's okay. It wasn't out of anger. It's just an accident. But I remember growing up, and we would just like fight, and
Yeah.
and so I playfully fight. Like, we don't. It
Well,
wasn't
we're not
anything
trying to
out
get
of
your
like
brother in
anger.
trouble. I
I
mean,
know,
come on.
I know. No,
I mean, I don't
I love
know,
my brother. I love
maybe a little bit. I don't know. I'm just trying to stir the pot a little bit. Um, I have plenty of stories between me and my sister that she'll never, be verbalized on any sort of meaningful level. But so I'm going to skip. So I do have more questions about sort of exploring identity, but I kind of want to get into, you know, I know you probably have 1,000 of these, but I would love for you to share, you know, what are some what are some times when people underestimated you and how did you respond?
The earliest memory that I have was like in eighth grade. Like, I'm going way, way back,
Hey, it's I'm
and
I'm digging it.
we
Do it.
we were at a retreat, and I wanted to walk up, or I guess hike up this mountain, and my teacher was like, "No, you can't do it. It's like too dangerous." And it wasn't. I mean, it was a trail, and she didn't allow me to do it. Um,
Ah,
it. I mean, that's a very. I mean, it obviously had an impact on me because I'm still talking about it years later. But like, in the grand scheme of things, that's different than somebody saying, "No, you can't apply for this job, or we're not going to hire you because of your disability. And then, me saying like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. But that at that time was like, wow, I'm not, you're not allowing me to like walk up this trail, this mountain with everybody else. That's all my classmates that are here. Um,
So what happened? Did you get to do it?
no, I didn't get to do it. No, I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm not doing it. So, but I would say that that's probably like the only time where I had let something stop me. But there's other instances where, like when I was playing wheelchair basketball, and I felt somewhat of an imposter because I hadn't I hadn't known about adaptive sports, and because I wasn't using a wheelchair, like this was like foreign, like, oh, wheelchair basketball, like I use crutches, like how's that going to work? And then being integrated into that team environment for the first time, that I was in a different space of, well, now everybody else has a disability and I relate to them, and now we fight or we have disagreements as teammates. And now I'm getting told like I can't do this, or I'm not good enough to do certain things on the court. So it pushed me to be better and be a better teammate and try to overcome those obstacles on the court. And that's why
Hmm.
I love sports so much, because of um, not only watching it but just playing it.
Yeah, it's I I think I am innately, when someone throws a challenge down or says I can't do something, my initial response is like, huh, hmm, that's super interesting. And so, well, now I have to do it, right? And I have a pivotal moment. I was in Girl Scouts, and there's a troop leader, and they wanted us to do these sewing badges, and I was like, I'm sorry, you want me to what? You want me to learn how to sew? Yeah, I have no freaking interest in that at all. How about archery? How about target practice? How about we build some,
Mm.
right? And she called my parents and told them that I was being a contrarian. And I mean, there is a little bit of truth in that, but it was more about, and it's not remotely the same as what you are talking about, right? But I think we're all faced with challenges, right? And how people perceive us and the things that we lead with and how we communicate ourselves to people and how we define ourselves to people. And so, my parents were there, and of course it was a phone, right? So like my dad was on the phone in the kitchen, and I think my mom picked up the phone in the bedroom so they could be on the phone together. And my parents were like, okay, well, what happened? And so the troop leader told the story. And my dad said, so I want to understand what you're saying. So you're upset because, and it was a sleepaway camp, right? A little more context. And so you had all these different activities that you're supposed to be able to do, right? And so he's like, you want them to do the sewing badge, and you want to send Jennifer home because she's asking you why she can't do these other things. Build rockets, do archery, which at this camp they had all of these things to do, right? And and so I was like, and he goes, well, why can't you do those? And she's like, well, we don't have those planned. Like this is going to be like a sewing. And my dad was like, so you're going to just make them sew all week and they're not. And he goes, but really, again, why can't they do these other things? And she's like, well, those are what the Boy Scouts are doing. And my
Mm.
dad was like, so she can't do that because she's a girl? And you think girls just need to do sewing? And she was like, well, I mean, essentially. And my mom was like, lost. My mom doesn't lose her mind very much. and she lost her mind. And so they drove up to the camp, which was like 3 hours away, picked me up and brought me home. And the message was, and then, of course they, you know, made a thing out of it. But it was a definable moment in my mind that my parents had my back,
Mm.
right? That someone was telling me I had to stay in this box that someone drew for me and everybody else. And for the record, I hate sewing. I can't even sew a button on. And if I do, it's a tragedy. Okay. Um, so I was like, you, and then interesting fun fact, fast forward when I was in high school, there was a class called interpersonal relations. The troop leader was the teacher. Funny. And in this, uh, there was a section about, like if you're like the first child, second child,
Yeah.
third child, et
Mhm.
cetera, like what your personality traits are and how you're supposed to fit into everything. And then she was going on about how, like, women are, and girls are traditionally, like the gatherers, and men are traditionally the hunters. And I was like, that's not been my experience. And she's like, Jennifer,
Mm.
no one's interested in your experience. And my friends were like, no, actually, we are kind of interested in what she wants to say. And so I was like, why are you still trying to put us in boxes? Why are the girls doing this and the boys are doing this? Why can't we all, why can't we do it all? What if I like to hunt? What if I like to shoot guns? What if I like, are you saying I can't do that? Because what? And so shockingly, I got sent to the principal's office. Then again, my parents they came to the school and had a conversation, and and they actually pulled her out of that and modified the curriculum, because you are literally teaching hundreds, thousands of students that this is the box that you fit in. And I think taking that and going back to your story, you really don't let people put you in a box. And I think that is things that people need to hear when you have a disability or when you don't. And I think the story about, the job interview, I'm still sort of boiling inside about that. I'm really trying to like tap it down. But how can people address that? I mean, for me, ignorance, people who are obtuse, people who, just don't seem to connect the dots, I just kind of go head on into that, right? Like, and you've heard me say this, I say it all the time. I'm not for everyone, but here's what I'm really good at, right? And so, like, it seems a little bit, you kind of do that. You're like, hey, this is who I am, this is my disability. And do you think that that breaks down barriers a little bit when you do that for other people coming behind you?
I think so. I think that, as soon as I was born, I was not put into a box. I had open heart surgery. I had a hole in my heart, and on top of the cerebral palsy. And then, you know, years later, I heard that like doctors didn't think I was going to be able to live. So some of them stopped operating on me. And yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember the last time I saw my pediatrician, because I had to start seeing another doctor, but he was there when I was born. And so I remember him telling me, like, yeah, things were just like really bad. There were doctors that just stopped operating because they didn't think you were going to live, just because of your situation. And that really fueled me. I mean, it still fuels me to this day, because like that, I mean, that's like the ultimate. People don't think that you're going to live, and like your job is to save a life, and you
Life.
stop operating. And so like I know I'm here for a purpose. And my crutches can be a icebreaker. They can be a blessing. Jennifer, I can't tell you how many times I'll go to like a sandwich place, and there are people like literally they're eating their sandwiches. They see me walking towards the door. They will physically get up and open the door for me. And I get I'm really appreciative of that. I think other people with disabilities may have other thoughts, but I take that as they see an opportunity to help somebody, and not that they feel sorry for me, but um,
Maybe it's just
I
simple kindness.
kindness, yes. And
You know?
so
Yeah.
I feel like I help other people become kind, and or
Hmm.
not become kind, but develop
No, I
kindness.
think you're right. I think that's maybe you are. And kindness is, my mom used to say, kindness and courteousness are contagious. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
if she's right, but maybe that's what you're doing, right? Why do you think you said something? Why do you think other people maybe with disabilities wouldn't appreciate that?
Um, because from what I've seen on social media and conversations, they may not appreciate somebody helping them because, like, I've been in situations where I try to look at it from the other side of, like, okay,
Yeah.
are they on a like lose-lose situation? If somebody helps me, do they think they're going to take away my autonomy because I'm not able to do, like, open the door, like, oh wow? Or if they don't help me,
Interesting.
does that then make them feel like an asshole because it's like, oh well, shoot. So I mean, I think it's maybe a lose-lose on the other side if they overthink it. But
So
I,
so maybe like, do you think do you think it's like sometimes people are offering to help that they're well meaning, but then it's possibly misguided, and there's sort of like a, oh my God, like we got this, from the people that maybe are being helped. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
I do. I do. And I try not to, I try to think of those situations as black and white, because if I if I think too deeply into that, then it doesn't serve me. I just I tend to go about my life, and it's funny. Like, I'll wake up in the mornings, and I won't even, like, remember or even realize that I have a disability. It's not until certain situations that I'm just like, oh yeah, I guess I do have like cerebral palsy. But I've been doing this for so long that I'm just like, it's me, and I am me. And so when somebody gets out of their chair to open a door, I have to think about, oh, that's why they're doing it. Um,
yeah.
and well, maybe that's not why, but again, kindness, and that's maybe their default or how they're raised. But I don't, it's not for me to get into their mind of, like, why people do what they do. But um no,
So let me
yeah.
let me ask you this: like, what's one word that you want people to associate with you that has nothing to do with your gender or your disability? And you only get one. So,
um uh
that's it.
Empathetic.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
empathetic.
I love that. I love that. So, question: you do a lot of advocacy work, right?
Hmm.
You talk a lot about it. And how do you balance being an advocate while not becoming the spokesperson? Or do you want to be the spokesperson? Like, like what,
mm,
riddle me that.
Riddle me that. I tend to tell, well, I tell people that I don't speak for the disability community. It it annoys me when I see on social media people with disabilities say these blanket statements that they think are applicable to every person with a disability, when every person
Mhm.
with a disability has a different story.
Right.
So it's like, I don't have any specific example off the top of my head, but like, my situations are specific to me. And so, but at the same time, there's like these macro issues that do affect everybody with a disability. We talk about accessibility and things like that. But there are micro instances where only a certain percentage of people with disabilities may only be affected by that. And so, like,
Hmm.
I can't relate to those. And so I try to look at what I am affected with on a micro level, and then go out on a macro level to with the that pool example. Like, I was staying at a hotel that I'm not
Hmm.
going to name, but there is no accessible entrance to get
Right.
to the pool. There's about like 5 stairs, 6 stairs. And when I went into the pool, I saw that they had a wheelchair lift to get into the pool, but there's no. It's just so weird. But so from that standpoint, like, yes, that affects every person with a disability who uses a wheelchair. They can't get to the pool, so like that's
Can
challenging.
I ask you a question? Another one.
Sure.
And this is, I think maybe many people like, is it okay to ask someone about their disability if you're genuinely trying to understand? Or does
Mm.
that, do you know what I mean? And I'm going to say I have someone in my life that is going through a transition, right? And I am trying to be really supportive of this process. And sometimes is it okay to ask certain things? Like, is it okay to, what are the boundaries, right? Because I think people are curious, but when does it become offensive versus curious for you? I mean,
I'm
I don't know. So I'm
I'm
just,
laugh I'm laughing because you mentioned boundaries. And um okay, so I'll there's like a two part, and I'll answer it. um m- Myself, my personality is such that it takes a lot for me to get offended. So if somebody's going to come up to me and start asking me questions, 9 times out of 10 I'll engage with them. But that I'm probably not the norm, or when I say the norm of somebody who with a disability who feels comfortable being in that situation. But I don't mind. I've grown accustomed to, it's part of my story. It's part of the territory. It's just like, yeah. But I
I mean,
also
and you can put
feel,
yourself out there, but I think not everybody does, right? And so, like, what is what is being respectful and curious, and what's being rude and insulting? Like,
and
do you have a way where someone would ask and it's like respectful versus a way not to do it, as an example?
um, um, I think as a respectful way would be to engage with me or anybody with a disability like you would, in some way, and then ease into it. I mean, I think it's easier if you've been affected or have some sort of relationship with a disability, whether it's in your family or in your workplace. Like, then you can tie it to, like, oh, hey, my brother has cerebral palsy, or my brother has spina bifida. And so, like, what's your experience like? So, like, that, that's really easy to get into a conversation. But I've had um I met somebody a few months ago. I was at this event with my
Mhm.
friend, and this guy comes up to me and just was like, "Hey, like, what's going on with your leg?" And my friend was like mortified, and I yeah, it took a lot for me to not like respond with a smart ass comment. But I was respectful, and shared with him, like, yeah, I have cerebral palsy. And but yeah, I don't usually correct people in conversation of like, hey, you shouldn't say that, unless they're using words that I feel are inappropriate. I
Yeah.
won't say them on live,
I mean,
but I
I
do,
let a couple of things
yeah,
fly, so that's okay.
yeah.
So I know. So tell me what your 2 degrees are in, because I think that's impressive.
Yeah, sure. So I have my bachelor's is in English. I went to school in Southern California, so I have lived out of state. I think there's this other perception when you have a disability that people are like, oh wow, like have you ever like moved out of your home state, or like are you always have you always stayed in a certain place? Not just me, but other people I'm sure have gotten sort of this like similar perception. So like I
Hmm.
have moved out um, and 3 times out of state, and I have my master's in adapted physical education.
Total underachiever. Yeah. So what do you want? What are you doing now? What do you want to do? And I mean, I know you do coaching, and I know you do, but you do a lot of other things. But what do you want to do? What's your future? Like, what's your roadmap looking like? And I know we are going to probably wrap up in a little bit. So what is it? Put it out there.
Well, in a few months, I am going to be giving my second TEDx talk. I was selected last week, and it's going to be in Austin on May 3rd. I'm very excited about that opportunity. So, in the near future, I'm going to be giving that talk, and I'm hoping that it opens up more speaking opportunities for me. Um, I have a couple of local events that I'll be putting on pretty soon, and I just want to help people. That sounds pretty broad, but I want to help companies. I want to help teachers and kids break down those barriers of disability. I'm working on a children's book as well.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome. I
I
didn't know that. I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing. What's it called? Do you have a name yet?
I don't have a name, but it's a children's book that I have been wanting to write for a while because I have a niece and I have a nephew, and so I have this understanding now that I'm more or less the first person in their lives that will be
Hmm.
exposed to disability. And so I want to be able to give them like books and show them other things, and really be that positive um like force in their lives. I'm also working on a screenplay, so when I went in October, I went to the Austin Film Festival.
Okay, so
And
anyone who is looking to invest in a movie, you need to talk to Travis.
I got the script. I'm starting my podcast back up. I got the book. I got the TEDx talk in
Hmm.
May. Um,
So that makes me think about this quote that I just put in our chat. What if our differences aren't obstacles to overcome, but superpowers to develop? And it's
mm,
flip the narrative on this conversation.
I think that my disability has turned into um, a superpower, and from that comes empathy, leadership, adaptability, listening, creativity, and then from those comes you know podcast, these different things that I'm interested in, and it can be applicable to anybody that has a disability or
When
not.
does your podcast launch?
So I took about a month and a half break because I wanted to kind of
To
refocus, but
relaunch.
it'll
Okay.
yeah, to relaunch. So it'll be out next Wednesday, and I'm really excited to just kind of dive into some other topics that weren't like I hadn't done before,
Hmm.
and I'm excited to for that to happen. And I just feel like an immense sense of gratitude. Um, and it's been an interesting few months. There was a movie that came out called Out of My Mind on Disney Plus back in
Hmm.
November about a young girl with cerebral palsy, adapted by the same title of the book. But I was able to interview the director of the movie on my podcast. And then the local news picked up that story. So I was also on the news.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't think
That's
I
so
ever,
cool.
yeah, I don't think I ever shared that with you. Yeah, so they did a news story about me because the author also lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, years ago. So there was a New Mexico tie with that, and so I've had these wonderful opportunities, and it just seems like every time I go back and visit Austin, more opportunities come up, and just like out of
I
the blue,
mean,
like
it's a pretty cool place.
I don't know what it is about that city, but I'm like, man, I'm going back soon, and it's yeah, it's just I'm so just appreciative of people like you who see value in me and other people that see value in me and want to uplift and elevate me, because that's what I try to do with others on a daily basis, like using my um, I've been leaning into this idea of getting off your crutch, and like how do we get off our quote unquote crutches, because I use them on a daily basis. But I think we all have at some point in our lives these mental crutches that prevent
Yeah.
us from getting to like point A to point B. So this
That's an
idea of
entire separate conversation.
yeah, 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 for sure. And that's why I think my it's bigger than like off the crutch is bigger than just my podcast. It's like, you know, how it's more of like a mindset shift, just in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Get off the crutch. I love that. I think, listen, that's probably a good note to end on. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. I think you are actually your own superpower. And I can't wait to see when you come to Austin. And to everyone who joined, we really appreciate it. And, you know, until the next one, right? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer.
It was my pleasure.